Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review. And today we're diving into a continuation of the previous episode straight after the dinner at the Todorokis, with a villain takedown, wrapping up the hero internship, and some more awkward family moments to work through those years of trauma. But before we get into all that, I just want to let you guys know that I have read the manga and I'm aware of any relevant future plot points and details. But for the purpose of these reviews, I only like to talk about what the anime's presented up to now and not go back and forth between the manga and the anime. It just helps to keep the reviews streamlined and allows anime-only fans to watch along and join in too. But with that being said, let's get started. We start off the episode with a flashback explaining the origin story of the creepy-looking villain who was introduced in the post-credits scene of the previous episode. The flashback begins showing Endeavour being an ass to some random police officer simply because he's having a bad day or maybe to show off how his mentality used to be, with him putting words in the cop's mouth about how All Might would have taken down the villain faster. He then glares at the cop and tells him that the villain's dangerous and not to take their eyes off him. And that's just if you need a reminder that Endeavour used to be the most insufferable person in the world. I get that he felt inferior to All Might, but Jesus, chill out a little. No wonder people were wary of him as soon as All Might retired. Then, as Endeavour does a press conference talking about how he took down the criminal, we get a glimpse of our villain of the week, who's honestly one of the creepiest characters they've had in the show. There's just something deeply unsettling about his eyes and the way he speaks. And his crazy obsession and devotion just gives me the shivers. And the ominous music didn't help either. The villain thinks about how when he first saw Endeavour, all he could see was how bright his flames burned. And obviously that's probably what got him fixated on Endeavour like any good serial killer. Ugh. Cutting back to the present, he continues his creepy villain monologue, with him talking about how he'd begun to lose interest in life and couldn't find joy in anything. But seeing Endeavour's flames gave him hope, and thus 7 years ago he attacked Endeavour in the hope that he'd be forced into killing him. But Endeavour managed to capture him alive, and he got sent to prison instead. And I'm not sure why anybody would think that releasing a man like this from prison is a good idea, but okay. I mean, literally everything about him screams, "I'm a deranged murderer. Lock me up." Could they not have put him in a hospital like Todoroki's mum? I mean, look at his eyes. Those are crazy eyes. And then what's the literal first thing he does after getting out? Oh, let's go hunt down Endeavour and try to get him to kill me in a fight. Very stable. I'm glad the prison system did its job rehabilitating this man. The crazy man then recounts that the first thing he did after getting out of prison, before he even ate anything, was to go snooping around his personal life and find out how to get Endeavour to kill him, with him reaching the conclusion that he has to target his kids to do so. And at this point, we see Natsu leaving the family estate whilst the creeper shoots up on a booster drug and stalks after him. Ugh, this is my worst nightmare. We then cut back to the Todoroki family where Fuyumi and Shoto are telling Deku and Bakugou about their late brother Toya, who died shortly after their mum went into hospital and caused her to spiral even further. We aren't told much about what actually happened to him, only that in Natsuo's eyes it was his dad's fault and thus their relationship will probably never heal. And I almost got the impression that Fuyumi was almost shaming her brother for still being mad about it. Like, a bit harsh. And also, this is pretty interesting stuff. The worst thing we'd heard about Endeavour was his regular abuse and tiger parent attitude towards Shoto. But to possibly be responsible for the death of his child is pretty crazy. Also, how is this brand new news? Surely Deku, the hero fanboy, would have heard about this. This is the death of a child from one of the top heroes in Japan. How do you cover that up? Anyway, she goes on about how far their families come to heal, with even their mother making progress, but then says that only Natsu can't seem to let go of his hostility. As if it's his fault, not their dad's. The poor dude lost his older brother, had to see his mum get committed to a psychiatric hospital, missed most of his little brother's life, and got saddled with a sister who keeps pressuring him to try and reconnect with the dad who caused the breakdown in the first place. This just makes me feel bad for him. And why is it that I'm finding Endeavour more likeable than Fuyumi at this point? She seems so nice, but just so stupid. At least Endeavour isn't forcing anything. Endeavour then comes in and tells them it's time for them to leave before we cut away to them all getting into the car outside. And this is a cute little scene where we see Deku thank Fuyumi for the meal, she thanks him for being Shoto's friend, Bakugou hilariously demands the tofu recipe, and Endeavour acknowledges what Fuyumi's actually done for him. So that's a nice little bit of wholesomeness before Natsuo gets abducted and held hostage by Bandage Man. We then cut to the car ride where Endeavour's telling the trio about their new schedules, working with him on the weekends as well as trying to shift around their school timetable in order to be able to work 2 days during the week as well. In another brief moment of levity, Bakugou then calls out Endeavour for not having a bigger and fancier car despite being the #1 hero, which prompts Endeavour's aggressive driver to slap him down and to ask when Endeavour started consorting with brats like him, with the answer being, since he became the #1. But I feel like the answer is more like since you agreed to turn them into child soldiers to take down the Meta Liberation Army. Tomato, tomato, am I right? And honestly, the chauffeur steals this scene in every way, and he's truly a breath of fresh air once you've been dealing with mostly the same characters episode after episode. It's nice to cut them up with some interesting minor characters. I also enjoyed Bakugo leaning on Deku like he's his own personal table because of how little room there is in the back seat. And for a moment, I did actually agree with Bakugo that he should have a bigger car as the number one. I mean, he lives in a massive house and can apparently afford a chauffeur, so why not a big car too? But then I thought he must have bought the house when all his kids were there too. The car's probably newer, and since all his kids except for one either hate him or are dead, and since his wife is locked up indefinitely, he thought he could probably save some money. Respect for frugal Endeavour. They then find themselves suddenly under attack by the bandage man, who they notice has kidnapped Natsu and is holding him hostage. The driver attempts to get them out of there, only to be blocked by the villain, who's probably hoping to get squished by Endeavour's car. And this causes them to spin out and start to crash, as Endeavour bursts out in full costume and charges Bandage Boy. And how did he put on his costume in that cramped little car while they were spinning out? Did he put it on over his clothes? Under his clothes? Was he briefly naked to get that on? Where was he keeping the massive shoulder pads? These are the questions I need answered. Anyway, he screams at the villain to let his son go and goes to attack him, only to pause as the villain uses Natsu as a human shield. And side note, poor Natsu. You go to an awkward dinner you didn't want to go to, you have to interact with your neglectful and indifferent dad, you leave the dinner without getting to properly build up a relationship with your younger brother and his friends, and then you get kidnapped by a creepy ass villain and get held up as a ransom for your dad who you definitely don't want to owe anything to. That must suck. The villain and Endeavour then talk a little, and he explains that he wants Endeavour to kill him, because like the Nomu, he's nothing but a mindless puppet that needs to die, and he's willing to kill Natsu to ensure Endeavour kills him if he needs to. And this dude's kind of giving me Joker vibes a little bit. Trying to break Endeavour and make him cross that moral line, getting all emotional that the hero he's obsessed with knows who he is, targeting the people Endeavour loves. It's Joker 101. And that's the thing about My Hero I find so cool. It takes a lot of inspiration from different sources, but twists and bends it just enough so it's still original, but so you can still see the inspiration and get excited by it. We then see an explosion behind the pair and see the big three emerge from the car and suit up thanks to the butler launching their luggage from the boot of the car. And it was pretty cool to see Deku and Bakugo chuck on their gauntlets and get ready to rumble, but why did Shoto put on his harness? What does it do? Is that ever explained? Does it prevent his clothes catching fire or something, or did he just find it stylish and decide, well, if they're suiting up, I might as well? Anyway, the three start to blast their way through the bandages that the villain shoots at them, which allows Endeavour to try and make his move. But once again, he hesitates when Natsu's used as a human shield against him. In a last-ditch effort to ruin Endeavour's life and cause as much chaos as possible before he gets taken down by the big three, the villain uses his bandages to throw a bunch of cars in the air, as well as hold Natsu in front of an oncoming train, which prompts Deku to stop the cars from falling with his newly controlled Black Whip, Bakugo to leap in front of the train and save Natsu, and Shoto to absolutely obliterate the villain. And all the while, Endeavour's teachings about being able to store up their maximum strength and release it as precisely as possible at a moment's notice is ringing in their ears, with Endeavour finding it remarkable how strong they'd become in just 1 week. And I think this scene goes to show not only how hard the three have worked to improve, but also how good a teacher Endeavour is. Imagine how awesome his sidekicks could be if he actually bothered to keep teaching them. Oh well. But this was still a really awesome scene. Anyway, as the gathering crowd thanks Deku for saving them, Endeavour sprints towards Natsu and envelops him and Bakugo in a big snuggly bear hug. And this is actually really cute. Even though he's trying to fix things, I don't recall him ever being so emotional or affectionate before, so these are good steps. And it kind of shows who Endeavour is deep down, considering this was almost an instinctual thing he did. And even though Bakugo didn't appreciate Endeavour and his old man smell, it was nice to see Endeavour being thankful for what he did. And they've certainly come a long way from the beginning of the internship, where he clearly didn't want Bakugo or Deku around at all. And it was also funny to see him put Endeavour in his place, mocking him about what he'd told them in the first episode of the work study, where he taunted them about being unable to get a single villain captured before he can. But it was really unsatisfying that Endeavour just said, yep, thanks. I mean, yeah, they just saved his son, but still, I get why Bakugo felt a bit cheated, honestly. And side note, can I also say that the voice acting for that scene was second to none? I mean, Bakugo's voice actors honestly shone with comedic moments this episode, with the demand for tofu, a bigger car, and recognition from the number one hero, especially with the little cracks in his voice and the air of arrogance when showing off. It was just so funny. He's definitely becoming more and more likable, and one of my absolute favourites as his bullying becomes less cruel and more amusing. Natsu then sort of comes to his senses and tries to get away from Endeavour, who apologises for freezing up and not rescuing him. explaining that he was afraid that if he did, then Natsu wouldn't want to have anything to do with him ever again. I'm guessing out of shame of having to be rescued by his hated father. I'm not sure how their relationship could get worse, but I guess I get where he's coming from. He then apologizes for running away and not shouldering his responsibilities, although he denies that he shunned them. And I don't know, it seems like he shunned them to me. No matter what way you slice it, ignoring your kids and ditching them to spend time training one exclusively is shunning. How else can you read that? He also then tells him that he as good as killed Toya, so obviously it's not going to be something like he abused him to death or something like that. It's going to be indirect, like how he dealt with the other kids apart from Shoto. And this is honestly still pretty shrouded in mystery so far. Normally I'd expect a full-on explanation as to what happened to this mysterious older brother, but considering we still know next to nothing about him, I'd say strap in for the long haul. If you weren't already invested in the Todoroki family storyline, I feel like this adds a whole new level to it. And honestly, I'm kind of sad that we'll probably be moving away from this storyline after this episode, but I'm excited to see it explored more in future seasons. And then, some cars honk at them. Seriously? This is clearly the side of a villain attack. I mean, Endeavour himself is literally standing right there, and there's a villain frozen in an ice block. The entitlement here frustrates me to my core. Stupid public. Natsuo then calls out Endeavour, telling him that he did shun them, or at least that's what Toya used to tell him. Again, hinting at some serious history between Endeavour and his eldest son. He then tells Endeavour that he'll never have his forgiveness because he's not kind like Shoto, to which Endeavour disagrees, telling them that he keeps showing up to all those dinners for Fuyumi's sake, so that she doesn't lose hope like he has. And to Endeavour, this proves that Natsu's kind. He then tells Natsu that he doesn't want forgiveness, and that isn't the reason he's doing all this. He wants to atone and to make things better for the family he ruined. And honestly, as apologies go, I feel like that was a pretty good one. Making it clear he just wants to help and isn't doing this so that they won't be mad at him anymore. It's always the stereotype that abusers never learn and just keep being the oxygen thieves they always have been, so it's incredibly satisfying seeing one actually make the right choices and do what he can to set things straight. And then, after Natsu yells at him asking what he could possibly do to atone for what he's done, Endeavour replies that he has an idea. So we finally get to see what he meant at the shrine from the end of that last episode. And then also we get to see the villain have a meltdown seeing Endeavour in this new parental light, realizing that he isn't the arrogant flame that he used to be, and that he's missed his chance to die a satisfying death at his hand. Oh well, back to prison with this guy please. Preferably permanently. We then cut away to the heroes talking to the cops about the villain, whose quirk apparently controls painted white lines. Oh, and I thought they were bandages. Oh well. We also reaffirm that the villain was high on a booster drug, and that there's a lot of the substance still floating around, prompting Endeavour's driver to tell him to be careful as he's been targeted twice in a number of days, not to mention the Nomu attack weeks before that. And this drug's been talked about a bit the second half of the season, so I'm going to be expecting a bit of an explanation and much more information relating to it towards the finale. After the driver mentions the fact that darkness never seems to go away, Endeavour observes his new little team and remarks that neither will light, before thinking that Hawks has a good eye for talent. And this was a little cheesy, but I liked the messaging. And I also found it cute that Bakugou won't share his hero name until he tells a certain someone. Clearly best genus based on the flashback a few episodes ago. So, hopefully he's not dead. And I also enjoyed Hawks all the way in another place being able to feel that Endeavour was talking about him. That's just some chat energy. We then cut to the credits and get a post-credit scene of Natsuo being taken home by Endeavour, where he tells his two older children that he's going to have a new house built for them to live in with Rei when she's discharged, and that the best thing he can do for his family is to let them go and be happy whilst he remains alone. And that brings us to the end of the episode, and I really liked it. The start was creepy and foreboding, the middle was emotionally satisfying and funny, and the end was a bit of a bummer, but in a good way. I thought it was a really good episode. But that's just my thoughts, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.